houses. He also does condos. He is going to be the moderator for our presentation, our discussion. We're going to be talking about, you've all heard of Class B office space. You've heard of Class A. We're going to be talking Class X office space. We're also going to be talking about what's going on up in North Beach, new redevelopment going on. But I'll let Daniel take the baton and he can kind of drive or steer the ship. What's going on, Daniel? Happy Friday.
Happy Friday, Peter. I like the new background. This is, you're looking very professional.
Well, listen, I got a little bit of chewing gum and I'm rubbing together some nickels and doing other things. I bought a computer off of a buddy. 20% of my screen is broken. Therefore, I got a good discount now. But fortunately, it's
But the
able to
camera looks
broadcast pretty good.
fantastic.
Yeah. Well, I'm using a MacBook now. A MacBook, I think, is what it's called. I used to be using a PC. Now I think you can see the difference. Hopefully, it's going to improve the whole presentation. And because it's summer, this is what you do. You work, and you figure things out.
You look like $1,000,000. Well, hey everybody. As Peter mentioned, my name is Daniel Hernandez. Peter Zalewski is up on top if you're watching on your mobile, and if you're watching on YouTube, he is to the left. So this show is called Buy, Sell, Hold Miami. And what we do, we have an interesting format. If you ever watch Pardon the Interruption on ESPN, we've picked a number of topics. We got an hour, and we've allocated about 7 minutes to each topic, as you can see in our rundown there. It's always going to be about South Florida real estate, and we're always going to talk about the community and how real estate and the current events and what those implications are for our greater real estate community. So this week, I want to jump right into it. Everybody knows Robert Ravani. If you don't know what he looks like by name, you probably know what he looks like by his hairstyle. He's got this really cool hairstyle. But even more than that, he's a self-proclaimed pioneer in something called Class X office space. And Peter, I don't know if you read into Class X office space, but I poked around a little bit, and so effectively, I see it as Google sort of pioneered this idea where, hey, we want people to be comfortable working long hours in the office. We want to make this as comfortable as possible, and this is more about them putting a foosball table and some granola bars in the break room. It's, they offer childcare, dry cleaning, and fully catered meals. And well, that's just the stuff I can think about off the top of my head. What Class X office space is they like sprinkled the Miami sexiness into this whole concept. And so with their newly announced superstar tenant is Playboy. You might know Playboy from the nudie magazines that they no longer publish, by the way. They don't publish Full Frontal anymore. It's more now a lifestyle brand, and they have a ton of licensing. I don't know if it's family friendly enough for a branded condo in Miami, but hey, never say never. Right. So Playboy has announced that they're moving their headquarters from Los Angeles, from sunny California, to sunny South Florida. And they're going to hang their hat or their blouse, I guess, because it's Playboy, over at the Ravani building on Michigan. The Ravani building, if you're not familiar with it, used to be called the Lincoln. He purchased it several years ago, and there's been all this hoopla about the tens of millions. I think he put $100 million renovating this building to attract tenants like Playboy. And so they're going to have the Playboy Club, and they're going to have all of these things to get, people who want to go to the office. Nobody wants to go to the office anymore. So my question to you is, well, A, would you lease in a Class X office space building? I don't know what the leasing terms are. I don't know what they're paying for it, but it's probably a heavy premium.
Interesting story, Daniel. I'll give you a little bit of history. So Playboy was actually founded in Chicago. Their headquarters were in Chicago. Hugh Hefner ultimately had his mansion, his Playboy mansion, out in Los Angeles. But so they were headquartered in Chicago, and they also were printed in Chicago. My father, when I was growing up, he was in the printers union. He worked. They printed like the Sun Times, which is a daily, is a tabloid. I think New York Post. He also printed the Tribune. He printed some other publications. But what they also printed was Playboy. He used to print the Playboys that were distributed all over the country and possibly even all over the world back there, because Chicago was like this distribution center. So there's a long history between Chicago and Playboy, and I guess my family, because my father was involved with printing it back in the day. But at the time, they actually printed like Sears catalog, Sears Roebuck, if you remember them. Montgomery Wards. These might be names that predate you, but this is the way you used to buy stuff. This was Amazon before Amazon, if you will, because they send out these catalogs. They did all this type of stuff. So Playboy coming to Miami and Miami Beach, I think it makes all the sense in the world. If you look at Los Angeles versus you look at sort of the glitter and the glitz of Miami and Miami Beach, it makes a lot more sense to be here. The problem is they're about 20 years too late. Playboy, I'm not sure that they even have a presence anymore. Maybe Playboy needs Miami and they need this developer and this office building owner who's got social media presence. Maybe they need him in Miami Beach more than Miami Beach really kind of needs Playboy. I think a lot of people have
Wow,
sort of moved
are
on.
you bullish on this? It's
Well,
sort of
you know,
I'm hearing that you're bullish on this.
I think it's a positive. I think what I always say when I do my bus tours, and I tell people, listen, if you want family entertainment, you go to Orlando. You want adult entertainment, you come to Miami. This just plays into the whole hoopla of what Miami's all about. This is a city. I mean, it's a city that's all about the vice. It's a city all about the adults. This is how we lure people here. This is how we can convince them to buy pre-construction condos named after a cabaret called the 11. This is Miami as there's not a better fit. The question is, what the hell took them so long to come to the realization they need to have a presence here in South Florida rather than stodgy Los Angeles?
That's a good point. I mean, how long ago did Hugh Hefner die? Was that about a decade ago now?
Yeah, it's probably something like that. Then I think the daughter took over. Yeah, I think the daughter took over at that point, and I think we pretty much just lost track of them. There were all these other public. I mean,
Well,
not to
we
get
got
raunchy.
OnlyFans to replace Playboy.
Yeah, so OnlyFans, we are, according to a report that came out, in terms of number of creators and presence, Miami is basically the top market for creators.
Well, I
But
mean,
but I will.
OnlyFans is based here.
Oh, I didn't know that. Is that right? That
Yeah,
makes all the sense in the world.
yeah, his originally OnlyFans wasn't supposed to be, what it's widely recognized for today. It was supposed to be for like music teachers who want to give guitar lessons. You could sign up kind of like Substack, but less article based and more sort of live interaction based. And then in its most recent iteration, that what we know it all for today, yeah, that's all based here. And I guess to your point, who doesn't want to film and to live? And if you're making all this money, why wouldn't you want to live in Miami? You don't want to be OnlyFans in Cleveland.
Right, exactly. Tap into the natural resource that is Miami. Miami's a place that's all about
It's
beautiful people.
sexy.
It's pretty people. I mean, it doesn't matter if you go to buy a condo or if you go into any kind of CVS. You're going to see probably somebody much more attractive. Doesn't matter which sex. You're going to be much more attractive down here in South Florida than they will, let's say, in Cleveland, and definitely
But
more so in Chicago.
I think it's interesting, and I think it's worth talking about sort of the juxtaposition. So Class X office space, one might be able to say that it competes with Class A, or now we have like Class A plus office space over in Brickell. Now, I guess Ken's not soliciting tenants in his building because he hasn't built it yet. But I'll leave you to talk about that. And Playboy, I don't think would have been a good fit for sort of the Brickell set of Class A office space. Like Vladislav Dornin, Aman, Oko Group, Masoni, he's building Una. He built 830 Brickell, which is the premier Class A office space in Brickell. Microsoft leased a bunch of space there. I think their last tenant was an investment bank out of Brazil, Banco Master, and they leased out at $190 a square foot. I mean, a lot of money. But do you see Playboy fitting into that wedge? No. So I think this Class X office space and the sexiness of the sand on Miami Beach and Robert Ravani's crazy haircut. I'm not knocking his haircut, by the way. I think it looks great. It looks great. It's a great look for Miami Beach. But those cultures don't really mix, and so this Class X office space, it's a product that supports this sort of, I wouldn't even call it progressive, but maybe outlandish branding, right? Like, would a white shoe law firm want to be? And they don't wear white shoes, by the way. They just call them white shoe law firms. But a white shoe law firm want to be in the same office building as Playboy? I don't know. Is that a good look? Maybe not. So I think this solves a really good problem. It's not like he created a solution for nothing.
And remember how we got here. So we started off this discussion talking about Playboy. Playboy was cutting edge at the time because they were printing a publication. They were selling a publication. They were mailing it, and in the mail, it was actually covered. So it would be sealed package, and inside would be your monthly magazine. They go ahead and they'd send it off, but they also had, great writers who were in there, a whole variety of writers. And then we start morphing into, if you remember in the 90s and the early 2000s, you really started to see the porn industry blow up. You had different groups around here in South Florida, which were pretty much putting it on the map. In fact, there was a front page Miami Herald story about a porn scene that was shot. What do they call it? Flagler Island, where the Flagler Memorial is, right off of the coast of West Avenue in Miami Beach. So I
You're
want to. I don't know
talking, is that Monument Island?
Monument Island. There you go. There with the Flagler. Yeah. Exactly. I think it was Flagler. Maybe it's not Flagler. I don't know. There's a monument on there. Front page story about how there was, this thing was going on. It's always kind of been around an economic development group, and I don't know if it was a Beacon Council or not, but they actually took a look at the economic impact, direct and indirect, related to, let's call it, the X industry, if you will, and it was fairly significant. There, the per capita number of let's say adult entertainment places. I don't know where it ranks nationwide, but I know when people come here, that is part of the mix. And then you bring in the 11 people who went ahead, they bought all the old Gold Rush sites, and they tried running it as a strip joint at first. After they rebuilt it, they had a restaurant on top. They had the ground floor was pretty much where the strippers were, and then the middle was like a luxury type of thing. And then it
Dancers,
morphed.
Peter.
Yeah, I'm sorry, dancers. Yeah, yeah.
Performers.
And now it's sort of morphed into this whole type of anybody can kind of go. Take a look at Tootsie's. Tootsie's was a little strip joint that was located, what is it, Ivesbury Road and State Road 7 or
I think
441.
it's the largest cabaret in the country per square foot.
They sold their dirt to a developer who put in a Starbucks and other thing. They took the cash. They took over a failed BJ's. Think Costco, and they turned it into a strip joint. And then early on, they were selling
It's funny.
luxury boxes.
It was called BJ's. The box store
Yeah,
called
yeah.
BJ's. They turned it into.
But they were selling luxury boxes at Tootsie's when they first opened. So if you were a corporate sponsor, you could buy a box just like you would at like a Marlins game, a Miami Dolphins game, a Miami Heat game to sort of participate. So it's really ingrained. And don't forget too, we also had King of Diamonds. King of Diamonds, which is now a Cadillac dealership.
You are
Uh,
very well read into this industry, Peter.
well, I have a buddy who was doing a long.
We all have a buddy. We all have a buddy.
Well, he was looking to do a book. He was looking to do a book on all this, and he wanted some field research. So, I went along, and I was able to sort of, check out what the local situation was like. But basically, what I'm telling you is it's ingrained in the local community, and for Playboy to be coming here, maybe it's a whole new start of a niche, a polished, refined niche that taps into what we all know is already going on. Hence, Miami being this top destination for creators on OnlyFans.
So we're out of time on this topic. So buy, sell, hold on Playboy's move to South Beach, validating Class X office space.
I think it's a strong buy, and this is a pound the table buy because South Beach has run into some real problems in recent years. His competition has got his competition from Greater Downtown Miami, the mainland Wynwood, has sucked away a lot of Miami Beach's allure. This might be a way to kind of bring it back. So I'm a strong buy, pound the table buy on this one.
So am I, Peter. Speaking of Miami Beach, as we move on, and we've been talking about this quite a bit for the last few weeks, and we were just talking about the juxtaposition between Class X office space on Miami Beach, different culture than the Class A office space that's in Brickell. Now we're talking about condos, and you have ultra luxury in Brickell being led by the St. Regis, 1428, which is YTech. You have the Mandarin Oriental at Swire, and they're all trading for over $2,000 a square feet in pre-construction. Now you cross the bridge, you go about 5 miles, and you go to the barrier island, Miami Beach, and you have this collection of, and these aren't 200, 300, 400 unit buildings. We're talking anywhere from 20 to 50 units, but the price per square foot in these buildings, they're over 4,000 square feet. Even in some of the legacy buildings, and I'm going to call Apogee a legacy building because we build so much here, but even the Apogee is trading for multiples of thousands of dollars per square foot. So what does the beach have that Brickell and the mainland doesn't have that allows them to justify these prices?
I mean, in my opinion, it's quality of life. Miami Beach is all about quality of life in terms of the planning, the zoning, the commissioners. They push quality of life over density, and I would revert back to, we all know the story. 1980s, Miami Beach runs into some real problems. You have the Mario boat lift. You have these retirees who are passing on. It's a combination. South Beach becomes really crime-ridden. You get a group or groups of investors out of New York, led by a preservationist called Barbara Kepman, and goes to save Art Deco. Remember, Art Deco is supposed to get torn down. They want to put up a bunch of high rises. That little district in South Beach that everybody's come to really love, and it's been photographed and shown all over the world. It's preserved. Gianni Versace parachutes in. He loves it. The models come. It's a cheap place to shoot. The Scarface movie comes out. Miami Vice, the TV series, which is still popular around the world, if you can believe that to that day. It starts to morph, it starts to change, and the new regime that's been running Miami Beach from the beginning, going back to Seymour Galber and others. A gentleman used to wear the bow tie and had the glasses. They were all about quality of life. Let's make this a quality of life place, and with it will come high prices, and that's ultimately what happened. Now juxtapose that to the mainland, where the mainland was basically extremely poor. 2000 census, Miami was the poorest big city in the country, and they needed to generate new development. Why? Because the coffers are filled with property taxes. 2% of your property taxes are 2%. A third goes to the city, a third to the county, a third to the school board. So Miami said, let's go high density. You want to put it up? Let's put it up. The planes, if the aviation's a problem, the FAA is a problem, we'll lobby on your behalf to overcome that problem. So you've had this dramatic change. So now quality of life is Miami Beach. You buy for posterity. It's a second home. It's inefficient. Mainland, where downtown Miami is, high density, 700 square foot, one beds, 1,000 square foot, two beds. Completely different world. So if you were a vacationer, if you've earned it, you're probably going to Miami Beach. If you're an investor looking for numbers, you're probably going to the mainland. And there are some crossovers, and that's the thing that kind of makes it interesting as the market evolves, at least from my perspective.
That's a really good point. I also want to bring up though that Miami Beach has been doing it for longer,
Yeah,
right?
much longer, much longer.
So any of these, billionaire New Yorkers, and we always go back to the billionaire New Yorkers because they've come to South Florida for years and years and years and years. Well, when they were in their 20s coming to Miami, before they became billionaires, they were only multimillionaires at this time. In the 90s, Brickell was nothing. There was nothing there. And so you would vacate, you would go to the Fontainebleau and the Miami Beach, you would go to the Raleigh, you would go to the Shelbourne. And that's where these folks came to vacation if they flew into Miami International Airport. They went directly to Miami Beach because there was nothing else. Coral Gables, even Coconut Grove, it was very much a suburb, right? And now Coconut Grove's hot. Gables is still, well, very affluent suburb, but a suburb nonetheless. It's far away from the central business district. And Miami Beach was always sort of this tourism second home hotspot. But now that Brickell's come, let's say Brickell's come online really in the last 15 years as somewhere to live, not just, I'm commuting into Brickell. You don't go overnight from $200 a square foot to $2,000 a square foot. This has been a process. So Miami
Yes.
Beach has been working on this steady incline for decades, whereas Brickell has really only been doing this for like half an hour.
Yeah, for the most part, I mean, you want a perfect example of that when you say Brickell. This is right over the river. But if you look at a project called One Miami, when Related Group put it up, George Perez, right next to the Hotel Intercontinental on the north bank of the Miami River, he built that two-tower complex. One was supposed to be a rental, one was supposed to be a condo because he didn't think he could sell the damn project. If you look at the balconies on that building, you're going to see it's cheap ass metal. It's cheap as it can be. It's not glass like you would expect to see on
So
such a
that was
key.
anticipated to be a multifamily, not a condo?
It was supposed to be one rental, one condo. That was the first time he was sampling that particular market. Right there next to the Aston Martin. It's
Well,
shoehorned
that's
in
where
between the
Related's
Aston Martin.
headquarters was before he built
Correct.
Grove Towers.
Correct. But at the time when he was putting it up, they were like, "Oh my God, you're going north of the river," because Brickell had been the place where you would build. North of the river was kind of a no-go zone. So the way he tested it out, he took a great location and he built, I'd say, a B minus to C plus quality property.
That's
Where if
really
you were to do that
unfortunate
today,
because that is the most banging
yep,
spot.
and it's mediocre at best location quality of a condo, at least from my perspective. So just to give you an
Well,
idea, and
you do a
that
lot of
building
your
only came
walks.
online
You
oh
do a lot of
five
your
two
walks in
thousand
that
five.
area, that you're on your tours. What's the resale blend in that building right now in those twin buildings?
I'd have to look at it, but generally speaking, when you look around there, it's about 700 a foot. But I would remind you, the Aston Martin that just came online. Last time we looked at it,
25%
24%.
inventory.
Yeah, 24% of the building is for sale. It should be somewhere in the ballpark of 5 to 10, depending on who you listen to. But it's a buyer's market. People are trying to unload and get out.
How much, if we were to really hone in on Aston Martin, how many months of supply are in Aston Martin, you would think? Is it balanced?
No. It was somewhere in the ballpark. I want to say 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm going off the top of my head here, but it's definitely much longer than a year. That whole area was like 20 something months, so it's not far fetched. But and Daniel, this is what's interesting about the story we're discussing here. So the reason it kind of came up is Coulter, this group that is out of
Big
where
development
are
company like Lennar.
yeah. But they're actually headquartered in Canada, Toronto, I think it is, because some of the Coulter people take my bus tours when I do, which by the way I'm bringing back in October. So
It's
I've
too
known them
hot
for
right
quite some
now.
time. Well, I'm still doing walking tours, but we're going to get people on buses in October, sort of take a look at it. But what's interesting about this is they went in and bought an old timeshare building called the Crystal Beach, or the Crystal, and it's located right there on 71st and Collins
Wow,
Avenue.
they did a condo timeshare buyout. So what
Yep,
I think you sent me the article. It was like 84
yep,
units. So if
yep.
if those are timeshared out, how many owners do you have to broker with?
Man, I can't even remember. I actually remember taking a look at these properties. So to give you a point of reference, it's going to be on 71st and Collins, as mentioned. It's about 16 blocks south of the 87 project, the piano project. The architect right, just north of the North Shore Park, right there on the cusp of Surfside. It's just north of everything going on in Middle Beach. But this has been an area, the way I look at Miami Beach is kind of like a teeter totter. So on the heavy part of the teeter totter is going to be South Beach. The part that's in the sky, if you will, on the teeter totter is going to be North Beach. The people who live in North Beach tend to be those who are working to the south in South Beach or to the north in places like Surfside or Bell Harbor or Sunny Isles Beach. So to come in here with a luxury project on this site, which was like I said, like a timeshare type of project, and I was in them, and they were not impressive. It was built in 1950, and
No, it's
they
a
want to try to
very
put up.
old building, but so many, all of these buildings along Collins are old.
Yeah, 100%. But here's the thing: they're trying to put up a high end quality development in an area that, for the most part, is known for working class. It's the big argument you always hear in Key West. You can't get labor in Key West, and the labor that does come, they either have to come from Florida City, or they come in some of the cheaper air quotes islands just north of Key West. That's what this kind of area is. So suddenly they're going to try to put up some real luxury. Other developers have tried it in the past, I'd say with mixed success. The Canyon Ranch, if we all know that story, that was the old Carillon, became a Canyon Ranch, ultimately ran into all kinds of problems, and now it's reverted back to Canyon Ranch because a bankruptcy judge terminated the licensing agreement for the Canyon Ranch name. So many have tried before, and I would say with some real suspect success, if you will.
But
So
like
we'll have to see if Coulter.
there's a Brazilian developer that's been very successful in this area, the 57 Ocean Multiplan.
Yeah, but still, I mean, in my mind, the way I define it is when you get to the 63rd Street Causeway, that little
Oh, so you say
bridge,
that's the cutoff point.
that's the cutoff point. Yeah. So the way we do it is we like to use physical landmarks. So we actually use 41st Street to designate effectively South Beach, if you will, because we use that causeway, and then we use
Sure.
63rd Street to designate North Beach, which will take you all the way up to the Surfside city limits. So in that North Beach neighborhood, this is going to be the cheapest real estate. This is going to be where somebody might pop the window of your car and steal your change, which South Beach used to be, but now it's more, well, maybe it's reverted back to that. But this is the working class neighborhood of Miami Beach, and to go forward with luxury that the likes that you're discussing in the story is talking about is really significant, because let's see, it's like an acre site, and I think they're only putting up, yeah, here we go,
It's
37 units.
32,000 square feet, 17 floors, 37 units.
Yeah, 37 units. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So okay, let's do the back of the napkin math on that. You got back of the napkin. I need a calculator. Everybody needs a calculator. What do you think I am, Rain Man? So you got 37 units. What's the blend square foot that is in penthouse? It's probably going to be what, 4,000. They're probably starting at 4,000 square feet. If it's
well,
luxury.
they say there's 17 stories, okay, and there's also going to be retail. So take a floor off. Say there's no 13. So is it really 16 stories that you can effectively
Okay,
use?
so let's subtract the penthouses out of it. Say there'll be 2 penthouses. So say 13 stories, 4,000 square feet, 2 units of floor.
Yeah, it's probably going to be 2 to 3 units of floor. Yep, they'll probably have to be flow through. You would have to look at the city as well as the ocean, is what I would imagine, based on that footprint size.
So at $4,000 a square foot, which is a number we've been throwing around for Miami Beach.
Okay.
Call it $4,000 a square foot. So these units, cheapest unit in the building, the second floor looking at the dumpster, as you would say, is a $14 million unit.
Yeah, which seems a little bit rich. I mean, Coulter, I don't know what they've built down here before. I've never done consulting for them, but I've met a lot of their people, like I said, on some of my bus tours and stuff. They've made a name recently by going into Fort Lauderdale and being very active in Fort Lauderdale with their kind of development. I'm always a little gun shy, or I'm always a little not skeptical, because Coulter has they have a brand down here. They have some experience, but I can't say, and I could be just having a senior moment, but I can't say they have a track record on Miami Beach. And please, if they do, please correct me. But not knowing the rules of engagement, if you will, in Miami Beach, and in the way that the commission and the design review board and everything kind of operates. It might make it a little bit more challenging, if you will. But Coulter can get it over the finish line. But the question is, can they actually get the price that they're going to demand in an area known for working class and cheap burritos and Lebanese food?
Well, they certainly, and we got to move on to the next topic, but they certainly got a deal on it. You got 32,000 square feet of oceanfront on Miami Beach. I don't care what cross street it's at, but they only paid, what, $23 million for it?
No, smart guys, smart people. No, definitely amongst the smartest people in the room. There's no question about that. This might be going outside of their their comfort area, because they have taken a while to kind of get this together. I wonder about the timing. Maybe the timing is based on some kind of pullback or some sort of but then again, you got the tariffs with the Liberation Day. Yeah, I'm not sure about the timing. The timing sort of throws me off, given how much supply is out there.
You're going to hold.
Yeah. I'm definitely, I would be a sell if not for Coulter's track record and the stuff they put up in Fort Lauderdale Beach and downtown Fort Lauderdale. So yeah, I'm a hold. I'm hopeful for them, but yeah, I would probably be a hold to a light sell.
I'm a buy on it. I'm a buy on it, and I'll tell you why. Because I think the demand, I think it's so hard to get these condo terminations done that the folks who have actually, I mean, if you've even gotten to this point, if you've gotten over the condo termination hump, and they've been largely pushed along by their ability to knock down old buildings that the county has deemed structurally unsound, right? So if you got that in your back pocket from the county, and you're able to go to these condo owners and say, look, I got your get out of jail free card, and here's some cash, get out. If you're able to do that exercise, then I think you're significantly further along. Even if they want to unload this thing, they could probably unload it for double, if not more, of what they paid for it a few years ago.
You're probably you're probably right about that. But it also goes back to macros. It also goes back to some of the other issues I think we're going to be discussing in the next story. So I don't know if you want me to
all right, we're going to hold on redevelopment Miami Beach. You make a convincing argument. But back onto that next topic, Peter. You open up with this one. What's Jerry saying out in Jackson Hole?
All right, so Bankers like to they like to pontificate. They like to go to lunch. They like baseball. I used to write about banking. I was a banking columnist over at the Miami Real Daily Business Review. Back in the day when they printed publications, they did all type of stuff. So I got to know some bankers and stuff. But every August, because people tend to go on vacation, they do it in Europe, and as a result, they do it here before school goes back. People kind of they do their thing. Summer's a time of building, relaxing, because there's going to be a grind right after Labor Day, which is the first Monday in September. So Jerome Powell, the Federal Reserve, and a bunch of people in the financial industry, every year they go out to Jackson Hole in Wyoming. The setting is beautiful. There's elk, there's coyote, there's everything. Think Yellowstone, but posh. You got mountains in the background called the Grand Tetons, if you will, or the Teton Mountains. So it's a spectacular place. But every year, think of it like a brainstorming session or one of these, like the Chambers of Commerce.
Like
They
an
get
Aspen
together.
Institute kind of thing.
Yeah. You get together, you talk shop, you got access. Everybody, nobody's wearing a tie. You kind of got a button down on. Maybe you have a coat on, maybe you don't. It's that type of vibe, but you're able to do things. So every year, Jackson Hole in August, Jackson Hole in Wyoming, which is where they hold it, is a small little regional airport. But what happens is they kind of lay out, okay, what's our game plan going forward? So Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve, the central bank of the United States, the one who's been under pressure by President Donald Trump, because he will not cut interest rates. The federal funds rate, which is what he controls, he and the group, Federal Open Market
The
Committee,
governors.
which is yeah. What they control basically trickles out and it has dramatic impact on mortgages, on any kind of interest rate that you might be getting. So he came out with a presentation today in which he indicated that they are starting to become open to interest rate cuts. Keep in mind, interest rates for the most part, federal funds rate, which is the rate that the central bank provides to banks on a short-term basis because they have to keep a certain ratio. But basically, he said that they might be willing to actually cut. Now, Wall Street went batshit crazy over it. I'm looking up here the Dow Jones. It's up close to 2%. You take a look at the S&P 500. It grew. It was up 1.5%. Take a look at Nasdaq, 1.89%. Everything's up, including, and what's down is the VIX. That's that's what tracks the volatility, the concerns, the weakness. So everybody is giddy about themselves right now because we might be having an interest rate cut as soon as September. Some people have gone out to say that we could see as much as a 2% or 200 basis point cuts
200
within the
basis
next year.
points.
200 basis points is what
And
they
then
what
remind our listeners and our viewers, how many more meetings do they have? They're meeting in September. They're meeting in October. Do they meet in December?
Good question. I think they have December. Yeah, I don't think there's one in November. So they're basically could get three more in. Everybody and they do surveys. Surveys saying 100% bet that they will be cutting rates by 25 basis points, most likely.
100%. The only thing certain in is life and death and taxes.
That's right. That's right. But according to, as a result of Jerome Powell, let's call him Old Man Powell, and I mean that in a
Old
positive
man
way.
Powell. There you are with the old man thing again.
So based on old man Powell, he's been staunch fighting against cutting interest rates. Why? Because inflation. The mandate of the central bank is two things. One is to keep inflation at 2% or less. And number two is ultimate unemployment. Unemployment rate's coming in at 4.2%. And inflation was down to 2.3%, but it's now ratcheting up. It's about 2.7 or so. And if you listen to preliminary reports, it could be even higher. Why? A lot of it has to do with the Liberation Day tariffs. We went from tariffs which were in the United States, generally speaking, under 4% to suddenly, on average, 17%. So right now, the corporations are absorbing the tariffs because remember, the group importing the product from overseas, they're the ones who are on the hook to pay for it. So those groups have been absorbing it. One of the reasons they have been able to do is that they pull forward a lot of their supply. They put it all in warehouses. Now they're burning through it. They're starting to run out, and they need to bring in new stuff. And as a result, we're starting to see reports like coming out of Walmart, the biggest retailer in the world, saying that they're going to have to cut profit margins. Why? Because they're absorbing these tariff costs, they're absorbing all this other type of stuff. They still promise to be the lowest retailer out there, putting downward pressure on companies like Target, who recently blew out or had its
The
CEO
CEO
step
just
down.
resigned.
Yeah, exactly. So this is kind of where we're going, and now the market's all excited because hey, listen, we're going to cut interest rates, and when interest rates go down, housing goes up. When interest rates go up, housing goes down. So we've been stuck down, 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 down. However, there was an analyst that's come out and said, listen, the reason the Jerome Powell is looking, old man Powell is looking to maybe cut rates is the Fed needs to pivot. They can't be focused on inflation anymore, which is coming in at 2.7%.
Well,
They need
because
to
that's the lever that they've been pulling for the last 4 years.
they've been focused on it, but now, according to internal numbers coming out from the central bank, their staffers are saying they're expecting a surge in unemployment all the way through 2027. So really, they had the inflation fire smoldering. It wasn't out altogether. And now it seems like all of a sudden the unemployment rate is starting to really become troubling. Remember, Doge fired a lot of different people. We've also had other layoffs that have occurred because of AI. Now, suddenly, we might be having to cut rates because we have a situation that's not really good related to unemployment. And then what happens? If you feel like you might lose your job or if you lost your job, you're not burning the same way you used to burn. And that trickles down into restaurants, trickles down into real estate. So we might have one of these situations, Daniel, and I'd love to hear what you have to say because I've been yapping way too long. What happens if we get 200 basis points or 2% a cut with ultimately on mortgages? So if we take mortgages from 7 to 5, which is what everybody wants to get housing going again, what happens if the rates are there? However, people are afraid about losing their jobs or they've lost their jobs and they don't feel like they can pull the trigger and buy. What happens then?
Well, and I think that's for another one of our topics. Our topics, they have a lot of synergy today. But if rates drop,
and that's what they're saying. 8 rate
and
cuts
if rates
in the
drop,
next year.
And look, we got what, a 25 basis point drop last December. It did nothing. Market's still frozen in certain tiers, and we're going to talk about that in our fifth topic. But there was an analyst report that I had read that every 50 basis point drop in mortgage rates boosts purchasing power by 5%. And that affects the different pricing tiers in different ways. So like the under $2 million market, that just like gives it steroids. The over $2 to $4 million market still grows. The $5 million market still grows, but a little bit less. And that's because folks that are buying houses less than $2 million, well, every little point counts. So that extra $200 or $300 a month that they don't have to put towards their mortgage, well, they can live life now still. And so every little bit matters. Do I think 25 bips is going to change the world? No, but would 25, 25, and 25 between now and the end of the year change a lot? I think so. And then totally anecdotal, but I think it's sort of psychological. If we were to get in a situation where a 30-year fix, somebody would just search it up on mortgage rates daily and they saw that it was under 5%, I think that would light a fire. And then
it probably would.
What does that do though to the competition in this market, right? We've continued to see price appreciation, especially in single family, despite the high interest rates. But if we lower interest rates, oh my gosh. I mean, just if the market's been going like this, it's going to start going like this in terms of pricing. Now, that is totally exclusive from the condominium market, right? We see pre-construction, luxury, new stuff still pretty strong. The vintage condo market, what is that going to do to the vintage condo market, Peter? And let me ask you this, as since you're the condo analyst, what is that going to do to the vintage condo market if interest rates fall? But just because interest rates fall, that has nothing to do with the special assessments. Those are still coming. So is that going to make the competition for sellers? Is it going to heighten the competition? Yeah.
It could potentially, as long as you're in a vintage condo, which is 30 years or more, and you've and your project has had gone through what's called a milestone inspection report, which is that 30 years, roll up the sleeve, let's really check it out. If that condo unit has the signed report, it was done by a licensed architect, licensed engineer, it's got a good chance of selling, and there is some real interest in that type of product. Now you cut interest rates, this product become extremely interesting. However, anybody looking to sell, whatever your special assessment is, that is a haircut. You were taking a haircut right
because you're going to pay for it. I haven't seen any instance where the buyer has assumed that special assessment at closing.
And they're not going to. They're not going to. Now you would say, yeah, but if it's so much cheaper, like in some circumstances,
well,
like
because it's so much cheaper, but you can't get financing for it, so you can't roll that into your mortgage. So the buyer, okay, let's say it's $1 million condo. right?
Yep.
$1 million
Yep.
condo with, could have $100,000 special assessment. To keep the math easy, so I'm putting 20% down because, well, that's what I can afford. I had $200K, but there's $100,000 special assessment. I just saved $200,000. I don't have the cash for an extra 100K. I don't have enough. I don't have $300,000. I have $200,000. And if there's enough of this happening, shit, you can't even get a mortgage because you're on a Fannie Mae blacklist. So then you got to go to hard money, and then you can't really buy $1 million. Actually, your spending power, because the hard money loan is what, 8.5%, 9%. So really, all you can afford is a $750,000 condo. And this is what you've been saying for months now, Peter. And I get it. The prices in these old vintage condos, they have to come down. You look at Ocala. I think I sent you the article
Yeah, you did.
about Ocala. Ocala's down 36% in the condo market.
Sounds close to my 40% call in January. 40% price reduction off of pandemic highs. Sounds very close.
Do you think that's an anomaly? Do you think Cape Coral's an anomaly, or do you think that's a cancer that's going to spread to the rest of the state?
That's a great question. What I would tell you is Cape Coral and the west coast of Florida primarily is going to be your Midwest buyer. It's going to be people driving Chevys and Fords. But when you come to the East Coast, it's going to be more like Maseratis, McLaren, stuff like that. The only thing is we are so focused on international here in South Florida. I mean, you referenced the Miami Miami Association of Realtor report talking about pre-construction, 49% of which is going to be coming from foreign nationals.
And if you're in the Central Business District, it's 99%.
90. I want to know who that one other percent is. Where the hell are they from?
But they were Canadians. It was the one Canadian guy.
Yeah, exactly. But basically, foreign nationals are the key to our market. Just like the West Coast is the key, is the Midwest kind of really, is what's going on. So while the Midwest might be dealing with whatever it's dealing with, and that's one reason contributing to what's going on in Cape Coral and other places, the problem we have is we just did a report on this. First 6 months of the year, Miami International Airport passenger traffic down 1.2%. Now you say, well, 1.2 doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, what does 1.2% mean? Give it to me in absolute numbers. What is that?
1.2 is it's about 150,000 passengers both ways, in plane and empty plane. Okay, but here's the rub. We were expected to grow coming into 2025 8.5%. So we got a 9.7% swing in what should have been growth. What is that in numbers? That's 2.2 million. In plane, deep plane, split it in half, call it 1 million people less traveling round trip through Miami International Airport. This will be the first time since 2020, year of the pandemic, that we will have a contraction if it continues. And it'll only be the fourth time since 2003 that we've had a contraction of international passenger traffic at MIA. Now, but why is that important? Because if we're going to sell these vintage condos, we're going to need foreign buyers who want to take advantage of a US dollar, which lost about 13% of its value against the euro since January. However, if they're afraid to come here because of Alligator Alcatraz, which a judge's ruled again, we'll see if they actually shut it down in the next 60 days or so.
No, they're only putting criminals in Alligator Alcatraz.
They're only putting criminals. But you listen to interviews on the radio, on TV, and people are saying, well, I wouldn't mind investing in the United States, but I'm coming from Latin America. Remember, 86% of the foreign buyers, according to the Miami Association of Realtor study, they're coming from Latin America. If you're afraid to buy here, who takes you out? If you're in one of these vintage condos and you want to unload because interest rates come down, who's going to buy you out? Is it going to be a domestic buyer?
I got to stop you there. We got to move on to the next topic. Powell's speech at Jackson Hole, rates cut coming down. In terms of this podcast, buy, sell, hold. Yes, I'm buying it. But if you own a vintage condo right now and you're anticipating this, sell, sell, sell. You should have sold 3 months ago.
You should have sold 3 years ago.
No, you saw some price appreciation.
Yeah, no, there was price appreciation. Yeah, 100%. No, I'd be a buy on Powell and his movement. The part that's going to get overlooked, though, is he's cutting rates. You only cut rates when there's a need to cut rates. He's cutting rates because out of fear of what's happening with unemployment and job growth going forward. So that's the number to watch. Unemployment right now, 4.2. They're expecting end of the year 4.5. It could go much higher next year, is what some of the analysts are saying.
So on this, the question is buy. We're buying Powell. We're buying Powell. We're buying Powell. And you mentioned this in the last topic, so we're honing down. We're zooming in on Miami, and we were talking about the national jobless numbers. But in Miami, which actually tracks lower than the national joblessness numbers, what are the unemployment numbers? What are the unemployment numbers here locally in Miami? What do they mean for our real estate market. And we've talked about this in the last few weeks. Over the summer, Mayor Daniel Hernandez came out with the news that we have a $402 million budget shortfall in the county. And how does this all sort of mesh together, and why does this matter for us here in the business we are? We're in real estate.
So you're going to have to let me pull up this story. I had sent it up to you. All right, here we go. I think I got it. Here we go. So let me first read some of the key points that come out. This is published by Miami Today. This is actually, it's a weekly newspaper. This is actually where I got my start back in 1993 when I came to South
No
Florida. And
shit. I thought
I
you
was a
went straight to
journalist.
the Herald.
No. I started off in Miami Today. Back in the day, in order to get into the print industry, it was extremely complicated. You had former Wall Street Journal types, you had New York Times types. I mean, the Miami Herald was something. It was a significant publication, and its presence and shadow. Nobody went directly there for the most part. So no, I started off at Miami Today. In fact, the editor of the Real Deal down here in Miami, I worked with her. She was working over at Miami Today at the time. Now she runs the Real Deal South Florida. But so the Miami Today, it's run by a guy called Michael Lewis. Michael came from the Miami News. You know that where the Freedom Tower is? That was originally, I think that was the Miami News building, just to give you an
That was
idea.
the original building?
Yeah. That building was built for a newspaper. I think it was the Miami News at the time, or it might have been a predecessor. There were so many different newspapers that were established basically to sell advertisement for all the dirt that was being sold. You know, the whole Magic City thing had popped up out of nowhere, if you will. So just to give you an idea, but Michael Lewis started the publication like 87, Miami News shut, and this is the publication. So I'm going to be referring to. So here's what they got. They say Miami-Dade's jobless rate ticks up sharply. This is a story that came out on 20th of August. Just the first couple graphs, and then I'll sort of discuss it with you. It says Miami-Dade's unemployment was 2.8% in July, up sharply from 2.4% in June. But you say 2.8 doesn't mean anything. U.S. national is 4.2. And this report is based on the Florida Department of Commerce. Now, the state's lowest unemployment in July among metropolitan statistical areas remained in Miami-Dade, Fort Lauderdale, and West Palm Beach, about 3.4%, up from 3.2% in June. So what we're seeing here is Miami-Dade County's unemployment rate went from 2.4 to suddenly 2.8. The Tri-County area went from 3.2 in June to 3.4 in July. And then overall in the state of Florida, it's holding firm at 3.7%. So then you have to ask yourself, okay, so why is the unemployment rate going up? Is it seasonal? Is it simply because, everybody went off in August? Maybe there were old man
Well, if I
Powell
don't know anything, I would say that, yeah, it is seasonal. What
it's
is it over the
seasonal.
last 5 years? Sure.
It's seasonal. But then you start to ask yourself, okay, but if they're doing all these mass deportations, wouldn't you think maybe the unemployment rate would go up? But then wouldn't there be, would there be more people to fill the jobs? This is the part that's sort of unclear. How many people have we left through deportation or self-deportation? You're hearing about these types of stories going on. But then you say, okay, well, it's seasonal. But then, we got this condo boom going on, all this new construction. So it's
Sure.
really kind of hard to gather and understand. But then we got international passenger traffic at Miami International Airport down, but maybe domestic passenger traffic is up. But then what happened to with cargo? People are trying to get ahead of the Liberation Day tariffs, so they brought in stuff early. And as we mentioned earlier, maybe they were, they're just starting to get through it now. So kind of what's playing out. And the only thing I would tell you is nobody knows. We came into May saying this is a summer of paralysis by analysis, a summer of wait and see. This, I think, is further confirming the fact that nobody knows what's really going on. If you were a business and you lose employees, maybe they self-deported, maybe they don't like the politics there, maybe whatever. What do? Are you going to replace that open position? Are you not going to replace that open position? We have so
Well,
many
you're gonna
questions, so
you're
much
gonna
confusion.
close your restaurant, and we see a bazillion restaurants closing.
Temporary. It's only temporary.
No,
for
no,
repairs.
no. It was just a pop up. We never. It was never a permanent solution. It was a pop up. It was a pop up. But I mean, this has to have something to do with it.
Yeah. I think this is an indicator. This is a gauge. This is sort of telling you, it's kind of like the weather predictions. They're telling you something's sort of up. We don't know exactly where the storm is headed, but something's kind of up. To see that, you wouldn't expect to see that, generally speaking, because if you look at the stock market, record high since Liberation Day volatility and the collapse, and then it's come skyrocketing up. You would think there'd be rapid fire new construction, there'd be people be burning cash, restaurants wouldn't have happy hours, which, by the way, is how I gauge the local economy. Look at the happy hours. If the happy hours are great, restaurant needs
Yeah,
to
but you
bring
can't
in.
really tell right now because Miami Spice is going on.
Exactly. So maybe it's just seasonal. Maybe this is just normal. But it's going up in the Tri-County South Florida area. And again, international passenger traffic through Miami International Airport is down 1.2% or 150,000. Not a big number, but it should have gone up 8.5%. So we have a 9.7% swing and or close to projected about 2.2 million passengers round trip that apparently are not showing up the way they were projected to.
But was that a projection based off of just continued growth from the pandemic? Because remember, 4 or 5 years ago during the
Yep.
pandemic, we bottomed out on travel. Nobody was
Great, great,
traveling, and then
great question. So
it exploded. And so was it just somebody drawing the chart and saying, well, it's just going to continue to go up? No, I mean, did it just plateau and now we're back at the normal level of travel, back and that whole revenge travel trend is over?
okay, so right after the pandemic, once the state of Florida said you don't have to wear a mask, and Miami Beach said you can twerk on police cars, it spiked. It went through the roof, 300, 200 and
Right.
something percent. Following year, it was up about, let's call it ballpark 70%. 2023, 2024, a blend of about 8.45%. Steady year over year growth. Three would have been a trend. So we were on pace to go from about 25 million or so to about 27 million, both in plane to deep plane,
And
round
then
trip, if you will.
and then I gotta dig into this because you're the
Yep.
one who found this article. But then I'm curious. My next question, and maybe we can talk about it some more next
Well,
week.
I'm just saying it's an indicator. If
No,
foreign
no,
buyers
totally.
don't come, who's buying? Who's pissing away cash on a $50 chicken
Well,
parmesan?
but remember, you don't have to fly to Miami to buy a condo in Miami. You
That's true.
can give Peter or Daniel a call and say Mandarin Oriental, Ugo Colombo. You just got to jump on a Zoom call and send the wire instructions, right?
Now,
So
now, Vlad. Now that Vlad has
now
gotten rental
Vlad,
cars, now Vlad might be
Vlad.
one of those.
So my question though is with another industry that we've seen explode and compounded annual growth are the cruises. So
Yep.
those numbers of folks flying into Miami, how many of them just come to Miami and jump on a Royal Caribbean cruise and say, I'm not spending any money in Miami, I'm going straight to the casino in international waters? How much of that was responsible for the landings in Miami and then they just got on a cruise ship? Because aren't we like the largest cruise ship port between us and Port Everglades, the largest cruise ship port in the world?
Now, yes, we are. We by far we are. If you look at the statistics. Now, what I will tell you is, generally speaking, when you do on these cruises, you're going to find that they tend to be more domestic oriented. I've been on a number of cruises that
Right,
go
right. You're
for
talking about
yeah,
you're right. You're talking about international arrivals. These are the numbers
yeah,
we're talking about.
international arrivals. Yep,
International
yep,
arrivals.
yeah. Now remember,
Yeah, you're right.
Genting's plan was to build on the former Miami Herald site. They were going to build a facility so you could go, you could gamble, you could spend money on retail. Then you could get on one of their cruise ships, which is Norwegian. You go out there, you gamble, you spend money, you go do retail, you come back, you stay in a hotel again, then you go out of Miami International Airport. So there is something there. 100% there is something here. But again, Tri County, 42% foreign national or foreign born are the residents. Miami-Dade County, 55% is foreign born. So when you see international passenger traffic down, you really have to wonder. Remember, only it's the first time since the pandemic, and it would only be the fourth time since 2003. We're going back to old man Greenspan, Ellen Greenspan days. When we talk about 2003, that's how long it's been. Traffic is always up, 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 up. When was the last two times it went up besides 2020? It went down, I should say, since 2020. Went down to 2014, and I don't remember why. To me, it didn't make sense. It wasn't really like a demarcation line. I don't know if there's a war or something. I
Was
don't know
that
what was going on.
Zika?
You know what? It might have been Zika. It might
I
have been the
think that was
Zika.
that was Zika. No, yeah, for
Yeah, that would
sure.
make sense. And then the time before that, since 2003, Lehman Brothers. The year after Lehman Brothers failure and the financial meltdown of the United States and possibly the global system, these are the only times that international passenger traffic's been down through Miami International Airport. So they got 6 months to kind of pull the plane out of the doom loop, if you will. But if international passenger traffic's down, who do condo sellers and developers, who do they peddle this product to, or
Well,
do they
I don't know
maybe
because we see the new construction numbers has been the foreign buyers, but now as all of these pre-con buildings that are coming online over the next 12 to 18 months, we're talking about resales, right? So
yep.
if these foreign buyers bought pre-construction, all of a sudden they try to rent them out, they're not making Peter's 1%, they want to sell. are we going to see an onslaught of new condo inventory? Because look, perfect example, the Mr. C in Coconut Grove. If you bought pre-construction, the Mr. C in Coconut Grove, you made a complete killing. The resales, they're reselling, if you're not looking at the water, $1,500-$1,600 a square foot. If you're on the bayfront building, $2,000 a square foot. I think the pre-con sales were somewhere between $800 and $900 a square foot around there in that building for just like the normal people units. So you practically doubled your equity in a pre-con project, which is a rarity. I think the Flatiron was another building where you had a lot of appreciation from pre-construction, but everything else.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that 100%. I mean, it's timing. Real estate is very simple. If you got the right timing, you can think of yourself as being the smartest person in the room. And if your timing is wrong and you are the smartest person in the room, it doesn't make a difference. It's not going to work. It's all about the timing, the first mover advantage, the first one to sort of plant the flag. They're able to take advantage of it. The people who are more arduous and they plan things out. They're the ones who typically get crushed.
So buy, sell, hold, Miami joblessness, and the implications for real estate here in Miami. The question is, do these jobless numbers, and we're gonna add that with the downward trend of internationals flying into Miami International, is that they buy, sell, hold for real estate in Miami? It's a sell.
It's a sell, but I'm buying the fact that numbers are coming out and we are not questioning the accuracy of the numbers.
Well, yeah,
thus
but
far.
that's a whole
Yeah.
different thing. Do you, if you accept the validity of the numbers, yeah, of course, I accept the validity of the numbers. This isn't the Bureau of Labor Statistics. We're not going to fire anybody because the airport numbers are coming down.
But the point I might make is hopefully we continue to see these numbers. As long as the numbers keep coming out, I'm going to love it.
Okay, but
good,
but
bad,
the
or
numbers that
indifferent.
are out,
Yep,
bad.
Yeah.
The implications of the numbers that are out are bad. All right.
Yeah. This is effectively a hurricane off the coast of Africa. Is it coming our way, or is it gonna steer away? That's the part people need to be aware of.
How about Hurricane Aaron? It didn't even make landfall. And have you been seeing the waves that have been hitting the Mid-Atlantic? It's going to be like Superstorm Sandy all over again, which I think was a Category 1 when it hit New York. But that's for another day. A real estate tale of two cities. Peter, I'm going to read you a small excerpt from the Miami Association of Realtors. Came out with something, I think today or yesterday. But here it goes. Ultra luxury activity is expanding into new territory. Miami-Dade recorded 28 single-family home sales topping $3,000 a square foot from January through July, a 115% increase from the same period last year. By comparison, there were no such sales in 2019. So this has really changed. Overall, Miami home sales in July fell 16% year over year, from a big number to a smaller number, reflecting higher mortgage rates and limited inventory. Single-family transactions dropped 14.6%, while condo sales declined 17.3%. However, the luxury segment showed resilience. Miami-Dade condo prices at $2 million and above held steady at 59 sales. As we spoke of, Peter, international demand continues to drive the market. Nearly half of all South Florida construction, pre-construction, and condo conversion sales over the past 18 months involved foreign buyers, according to Miami's first new construction global sales report. Now, that was the Miami Association of Realtors, so it's legit. And then I pulled a quote from a gentleman, a Mr. Zalewski, and from the New York Times. Peter, you got quoted in the New York Times. Good for you. We're in a completely different world from when people were queuing up to see open houses and multiple offers were coming back above asking price. So I just threw a lot at you. But from what I read, it seems like it certainly is a tale of two cities. The high market, it's killing it. It's on fire. Pre-construction, as long as foreign buyers continue to come in, which they're coming in less, but as long as they continue to come in, pre-construction is going to be awesome. But old condos and vintage product, very much less so, especially if interest rates don't fall as we expect them to. So everything we talked about today, we talked about the redevelopment of Miami Beach. We talked about the potential lowering of interest rates. Everybody likes to talk about the Miami market. Oh, people call you, you see somebody at a bar. Hey, how's the market? And I always have to retort by saying, well, what market are we talking about here? Are we talking about Star Island? Because if you owned a property on the west side of Star Island, there's a pretty good chance Ken Griffin gave you $40 million for it. He's amassed 6 acres on Star Island at this point.
Really?
You thought the Arsh deal down in Vizcaya was big. I don't even know what house he's living in. Maybe he's just playing a shell game. Maybe he's living in a bunker under the Brickell site. I don't know. But he has 6 acres. That's bigger than the Frost assemblage on the northwest corner of Star Island. I think it's like 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 Star Island Drive he's purchased at this point. But I'm going off on a tangent. What does this say about the 2 separate markets or the 3 or 4 separate markets that make up Miami?
What it says is you have to look at the source first and foremost, generally speaking. So the Realtor Association is a sell side industry group. Their job is to try to promote real estate any and every way possible, and as a result, they're always going to be very positive. New York Times, I would say, is they're going to try to be down the center. They will probably lean to the left a little bit.
They have very good primary sources.
But when they call somebody like me, they kind of want to get like they want the yang to the yin, which is everything is fantastic, everything is great. So what I would tell you is I think we're at a moment where everybody's going to be forced to pivot. We're all being forced to pivot in a variety of different ways, but I think we're going to have to force to pivot on the real estate side. And what I mean in terms of our logic and our thought process, and here's kind of what I mean. If you take a look at the actual numbers, you're seeing the vintage condos are starting to catch fire in terms of selling. Why? Because they got the signed report, the inspection, the milestone inspection report.
And so the special assessments are starting to come through.
And the special assessments have come through, and I
thought with this new condo legislation they're able to kick the can for another 2 years, or we haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, but the sellers who want to get out, they're starting to make the decision to formally get out, or they're taking their place off the market and say, "There's no way in heck I'm going to let this property go for that particular price. I'm simply going to ride it out. I will pay." So we've seen a peeling off of the listings in April.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
In April, we were at 30,000. I did an interview with CBS News, and I said, it looks like we could get to 40,000 because we were growing. Now we've pulled back. We're going to fall below 26,000 listings. And one of the reasons is people are like, I'm simply not going to take less than what I paid. I overpaid, or the place is worth this. I'm
just
going to
wait it out.
Yeah, so we're seeing listings peel off. They're getting peeled off. So what is happening is the sellers who do want to get rid of it, and they're recognizing what their kind of real prices are, and the special assessments have to be absorbed by the seller. But these people want to get out. Remember, you want to be the first rat off the ship, if you will, because going forward, prices only tend to go down. So for that New York Times piece, I pulled some numbers, and the vintage market is getting competitive versus the luxury side. I would tell you, which is what the realtors are telling you. That market seems like it's starting to grow and mushroom in terms of supply. Now, I will tell you the stories about places selling for record prices. Always a critical issue to watch, at least from my perspective, and I tend to lean bear. Watch what the original ask was versus the final transaction price, the bid ask, if you will. Watch what that is, and as that starts to shrink and shrink and shrink, we say typically it's supposed to be about 20% difference between what they trade for and what they're ultimately asking. But as it gets less than 20%, it starts to reflect confidence of sellers. So I would just tell you, you might have to rethink, and I'm saying everybody, how you're looking at this market, because vintage might suddenly become hot and luxury might actually be out in the cold after enjoying all the limelight.
Why? Because it's just going to be so cheap.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Sunny Isles, 17 cents on the dollar, if you will, is what an asking price is on a vintage condo 30 years or more versus the overall market. So, greater downtown Miami, 50%. You can't overlook these vintage units if they have the seal of approval, and that's assuming you trust the licensed architect, the licensed engineer that sort of signed off on it. And the only other tidbit I throw out to you, if you go to the Miami Association of Realtors study, and I did a report on it. If you go to the study, again, 49% of pre-construction is going to be foreign nationals, 86% are Latin Americans. Well, we got a problem with the immigration crackdown that's going on. and who it's targeting. It's targeting a lot of people who look like those that come from Latin America. So if these people out of Latin America say, I want to buy, but I just don't feel comfortable. So if they disappear, is it going to be necessary for a developer who's peddling luxury pre-construction stuff? Are they going to have to divert where their people are going to sell? Are they still going to go to Latin America and the Caribbean, or are they going to be going to Eastern Europe? Are they going to be going to Russia? Are they going to be going to Turkey? Are they going to have to, simply peddle the projects in a different way because of the current climate for immigration? And that's the part that's unknown, at least at this point.
Well, I don't know if we were talking about this or I was talking about it with someone, and we were talking about Latin Americans coming to Miami for pre-construction, and why that's changed. And then a lot of our Latin American buyers, they also flock to Madrid because Madrid, Latin America, Spanish-speaking country. And somebody was telling me that the reason why Madrid has exploded, conversely with Miami, well, Miami has also exploded, but I mean, Madrid has seen tremendous growth. I mean, tremendous growth in the last decade, is because with broadband telecommunications and remote work, all of a sudden, Madrid isn't so far away from Colombia anymore. It used to be, like, I'll buy my place in Miami because if I gotta get back to Colombia for work, I can get it. I'm back in Bogota in a 3-hour flight. But if I went to Madrid, it's like an 8 or a 9 or maybe a 10-hour flight. But now I can go to my flat in Madrid and just hop on a Zoom, deal with business, and that's it. And maybe that was anomalous. One guy you knew had a place in Madrid. But more and more people I talk to in Latin America, at least the ultra wealthy, they'll have their place in Miami, but they also have a place in Madrid, and they spend just as much time there as they spend here.
I'm an avid listener of National Public Radio. WLRN is a local station, and there was a piece on there today. Every Friday they do a roundup. So the Florida Roundup, it's done by Tom Hudson. He's a journalist down here a long time. Used to do TV, now he does radio. And they had a clip on that came from a local reporter, a guy called Tim Pageant, longtime radio person in South Florida. And he had a piece talking about one was an Argentinian gentleman who came here illegally, ultimately set up a family, has a business, and all that type of stuff. He's now self-deporting. And he says in self-deporting, who's really losing is actually the United States, because you're going to lose people who are willing to go out there and grind. Again, not to make it political, but he's saying, I'm leaving and my kids are going to stay. They're U.S. citizens, that type of thing. But basically, you're losing a business person. And I don't know if I'd ever want to come back because I'm feeling racism. I'm feeling all this type of stuff. And again, not to talk politics, but so you got that vibe. And then as part of the interview, which is interesting, and you'll love this, Daniel, a woman who was Venezuelan who was living in Miami. She self-deported. She owned a business. She self-deported. Guess where she went? She went to Madrid. And why did she go to Madrid? According to the interview, she went to Madrid because just like the United States could be facing a ratio of birth to death, is our population growing? Like, remember, Germany has a problem. China has a significant problem. Madrid and
Japan.
Spain have a problem. So they're welcoming. They want new blood coming in. So you have people to provide all the types of services. And the argument the woman who was living in Miami and moved to Madrid is simply, I don't feel safe there. I don't feel comfortable. And I come to Madrid and now they're welcoming me with open arms. We'll see how long it lasts. But thus far, that's the vibe that came out of this piece that aired on the Florida Roundup today on WLRN. And anybody who wants to listen to it, you can find it on Spotify or anywhere else.
And so that's one sect. So that's one of our cities here, right? That's one of our real estate markets. And then we have the 10 million plus market, which as Miami Realtors reported, didn't have a single 3,000 per square foot sale in 2019. And now every new construction building up and down Collins is selling for at least $3,000 a square foot. So then, you have that Miami market that is just exploding. I mean, exploding. And then you have Coral Gables, the $2 to $5 million market, where if you've priced a house correctly, a single family home we're talking about here, from $2 to $5 million in Coral Gables, which has the highest median sale price in the county. I think it's about $1.8 million in 33146. If you price that correctly, it's selling in a week. They're selling off market because they're close to the private schools. You have some good public schools in these districts. You have Sunset Elementary right there on Sunset in South Miami, which is like There's an unincorporated district, High Pines, Ponce Davis, and then Coral Gables and the Coral Gables Waterway. Cocoa Plum's right there. They call it the Golden Triangle, the Platinum Triangle. It's very nice, but those houses are selling quick, and interest rates have remained where they are. Mortgage rate daily has the 30-year fix at 6.52%, which if you have very good credit, which I'm sure many people who are buying $2 to $5 million have, you're probably getting a lower interest rate, probably closer to 6%. And if you're feeling really naughty, you're getting an ARM, which you're probably even beating by another 25 or 50 basis points. So you're between that 5.5% to 6% interest rate in that space. And so if rates get cut, that space is going to get even hotter and it's going to drive prices up. And so that's another market. And so you have all of these little markets. You have the self-deporters, you have the foreign buyers who are still using pre-construction as their bank accounts, which has been a thing and will continue to be a thing as long as Latin American economies continue to be volatile and unstable. And then you have the super affluent, the New Yorkers coming down here who Peter say don't work. I think some of them work, right? There's like one affluent guy who comes down here from New York who actually has a full-time job. Getting Class X office space, the Playboy executives, you might say.
Listen. Okay, so this is reminding me of 2018. The South Florida condo market, the Miami condo market was in trouble. We were expecting a pullback. And at the time, what happened is Jerome Powell had just been in office, named as the central bank, the head of the central bank. President Trump started to jawbone him under Trump 45, that administration, and cutting the interest rates basically provided a lifeline to the condo market down here in South Florida, and I'm sure it did wonders for the single family house market, which
You're
I
talking
don't track.
2020 now, right?
Yeah, I'm talking leading up to the pandemic, but there was a move towards raising interest rates, and President Trump got up old man Powell's ass. They end up cutting, and we were able to sort of continue on what should have been a cleanup. Pandemic hits, prices go down, uh, don't have to wear a mask, and you can twerk on a police car, prices spike. So we're right back, it feels like, where we were in like 18, where Powell wants to keep them strong, President Trump wants them lower. And we could see a repeat of what we saw back then. So, I would tell everybody right now we're coming to the end of summer. In our opinion, summer ends in October, but I think you need to sort of revisit your
At the
base
end of
case.
hurricane season.
Yeah, you're going to need to revisit your base case. And if we, in fact, are going to get 8 rate cuts where you're going to see 200 basis points peeled off of the mortgage rates, that is going to spur new construction and sales. The question is, are people going to have jobs? If
Well, will
people
you
are
have anybody
continuing
to
to
work
work,
at the construction sites?
yeah, and that'll be the rub, the push pull. But this is feeling a lot like what interest rate cuts. It feels like we could be prolonging it yet again. Remember, we haven't cleaned up formally since 2011. We've only been upward since 2011. A cycle is typically 7 to 10 years. So we are in uncharted territory. And that's one of the reasons I made the call in January that we're going to have a 40% price depreciation discount falling off from pandemic highs because the prices are so astronomical. But if we then add, more to get this thing even higher, it's out of the stratosphere for the most part. But signs are good that we're going to have a correction. But who knows? Maybe this is the cure to prolong it even higher.
So, to bring us to the end of our show today, Peter, a real estate tale of two cities: buy, sell, hold.
I am a sell on the realtor information. I'm a buy partially on the New York Times take on it because I've quoted them.
No.
At this point, I'm going to revisit my base case going into winter, which will be November. But at this point, I stand firm.
We lost Peter. Peter, it wasn't your time to go yet. I think he was going to say hold. He was either going to say hold or sell. I'm not sure. Why don't we ask him? Because Peter's back.
How's that for a cliffhanger?
That was a cliffhanger. Did you do that on purpose?
No, I don't know what the hell happened. Listen, overall, I'm still standing firm. We're going to have a pullback in pricing from pandemic highs. I see more reason to be bearish than bullish. But I will revisit my base case scenario going into November. But at this point, I'm still a hard sell on condos. Single family, I simply don't follow. So as a result of that, I would be a sell.
I'm a hold. I need to change this so we can say Peter holds, Daniel sells, because we disagree on so much, and that's why the show is so fantastic, everybody. Sorry we were a little bit late today. Sorry we went 14 minutes over the hour, but we're just having so much fun. Hope you had fun. My name is Daniel Hernandez. I'm with Compass. This is Peter Zalewski of the Miami Condo Investing Club. It sounds like there's thunder and lightning outside of Miami today, so if you're driving home from work, please be careful. And if you're going out tonight, definitely Uber. All right, guys, have a good weekend.